Okay, let's jump right into this. Today's explainer is all about breaking out of that exhausting modern grind, and we're doing it by tapping into a kind of wisdom you literally cannot find in a textbook or some trendy productivity blog. We're looking at the raw, retrospective wisdom of older generations. And the author of our source material today gets this wisdom in a pretty unusual way. You know how rideshare trips in the US can be quite expensive, right? Well, the author actually uses that to their advantage. Whenever they pay for a ride, they actively prefer getting older drivers. There are a few reasons for this, but the absolute coolest one is that they use this time enclosed in the car to ask a very specific, deeply profound question to someone who's already lived through all those decades we're currently stressing over.
And here is the exact question they ask. If you were my age again, what would you have done differently? Man, that is a heavy prompt. It's difficult, but for people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, it's like a catalyst. It just instantly brings back this flood of a lifetime of memories. You know, the forks in the road, the big wins, and yeah, the regrets. It forces this sudden, vivid reflection on a life fully lived, or maybe a life partially missed.
So what do they usually say? Well, across multiple rides and totally different drivers, there is a remarkably consistent theme that pops up. The biggest regret from these elders is actually really simple. They wish they had dared more when they were young. They look back and realize all those things they were so terrified of just didn't matter. Instead of giving, career advice or stock tips, they almost always just tell you to enjoy life. Go travel. Truly make the most of the present moment. Because youth, it's a fleeting currency.
Which brings us to one specific conversation with a 70-year-old driver named Don. The author asked him, "Hey Don, we're halfway to my destination. What advice would you give me? What would you have done differently?" And Don didn't just give some quick little one-liner. No, he spoke for about 10 straight minutes, dropping some incredible hard-earned wisdom. Now, I'm not going to share the whole conversation with you because, well, you didn't pitch in for the fare. But we are going to pull out the absolute best takeaways from Don's 10-minute masterclass.
All right, let's get into Pillar 1, Dare to Enjoy Life. Don's fundamental truth here is that you're only young once, so you really need to travel, see new places, take those weekend trips. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, travel? With whose money? It's that immediate cynical reaction we all have, right? But the source material points out something huge. That immediate pushback, that is exactly the problem right there.
It's the classic battle, limiting mindsets versus living fully. These limiting mindsets have kept so many of us completely boxed into our little comfortable corners. We hold so tightly to these social media-shaped convictions about how life is supposed to be lived, just waiting around for the perfect financial moment that, let's be honest, rarely ever arrives. Now, the advice here isn't to be financially reckless. The advice is simply that you should live. So yes, you should absolutely travel. And hey, if you do book a trip because of this explainer, definitely feel free to include me on the itinerary.
Moving right along here is Pillar 2, Stop living in fear. You see, the fear of trying something new is almost always way more painful than the actual fear of rejection. To really highlight this, the author takes a little detour and shares a hilarious anecdote about a friend of theirs. This is a guy who truly maximizes life. He does some pretty crazy things. Sometimes he even rocks a wig just for the fun of it. Anyway, he wanted to travel to a specific region, but his supervisor strongly advised against it due to some local concerns. He was told that if he still wanted to go, he literally had to officially declare that he was traveling against his supervisor's direct advice. But guess what? He still traveled. He didn't let that administrative red tape stop him. And watching this friend boldly declare his plans have this massive ripple effect. It literally gave the author the courage to immediately book their own trip to Puerto Rico for that very month, completely without an ounce of fear. Courage is contagious, I want to encourage you to try that one thing you've been putting off because you're afraid. But to do that, you have to stop worrying about what will people say. If you're constantly afraid that people are going to discover your flaws, you need to realize something that might sting a little. That fear, it is actually rooted in pride. It's not humility keeping you quiet. It's pride. So let me ask you this pointed question. Who are you, really, that everyone should be thinking about you all the time? Ouch, right? It's a bit of a gut punch. But honestly, it's so freeing. People are way too busy worrying about their own lives to obsess over you. Once you drop the pride and realize you aren't the center of everyone else's universe, you are finally free to actually live. All right, that brings us to Pillar 3, Embrace Community.
We really need to unpack these toxic modern mantras our generation has been sold about hyper-independence. Just look at this list of what the author bluntly calls modern rubbish. Let me figure it out on my own. I need a break from people. If you want to talk to me, text me, don't call me. Or, unless you're my lover, leave a message. We see this stuff glorified online constantly as boundaries or self-care. But the author rightly points out that this isolating mindset is total rubbish, and it is a massive driver for why so many people are struggling with depression today.
Your job, your education, your endless personal development goals, they are simply not enough to give you all the fulfillment you need in life. The real solution? Having genuine friends, belonging to a spiritual community, staying closely connected to your family. These are the anchors that actually sustain us when we look back on our lives.
And a huge part of embracing community is letting people know when you actually need help. As the author beautifully notes, in my short life, simply because I asked, I have received tremendous help. At the end of the day, the absolute best of every person is still just human. This whole world is built on relationships. You cannot and you should not do it all alone. Which leads us straight into our ultimate takeaway. Ask the right questions.
Now, that conversation with Dawn in the rideshare was much richer than just these few points, but it all stems from asking thoughtful questions, which perfectly sets up this popular internet meme. It asks, we're all living this life for the first time, so how did some people become life coaches? It's a pretty funny observation, right? If none of us have done this before, how is anyone guiding anyone else?
Well, here is the profound answer. They asked the right questions. They didn't just figure it out all by themselves in a vacuum. They broke out of their shells, they built deep connections, and they dared to ask the right questions to the people who had lived before them. Just like asking a 70-year-old driver what he would do differently. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this. What questions are you avoiding right now? And who around you is holding the exact wisdom you need to finally start truly living your life?